Welcome to session 5 of the discussion, and in session 5 we'll be looking at the information cycle, or what we call the information cycle. So we'll be discussing the information cycle and who are involved in the cycle, and the objectives that we hope to achieve is that by the end of the discussion you will know how generation, processing, and the use of information is interwoven. Then you'll be able to identify information producers and how they generate information. So we'll be looking at the cyclical nature of information. That's the major topics that we'll consider: cyclical nature of information, components of the information cycle, and then the information producers. So the cyclical nature of information. Now, information moves in the cycle. That is, the creation and distribution of information form a descendable and repetitive pattern. Okay, and so one of the major attributes of the phenomenon of information is the dependency factor. What it means is that information builds on existing information, and so the more you generate information, or the more you use information, the more information you generate. And it reminds me of an advertisement that used to run by S.C. Johnson Company on red cockroach killer. The advertisement goes like: one cockroach generates 4 cockroaches. Then 4 cockroaches generates 12 cockroaches. 12 cockroaches generate 36 cockroaches. The 36 cockroaches generate 64 cockroaches. And then very soon you have a cockroach empire. So it's the same with information. As I said, the more you use, the more you create information. And the creation, the processing, the storage, the retrieval, and dissemination of information and its use are therefore interwoven. Now, components of the information cycle, in other words, activities that are involved in the information cycle. The activities border on the creation and representation of information, the searching, selection, and acquisition of information, organization of the information, and then the storage, preservation, and retrieval of information, dissemination and communication of information, and then management of the information. So when we talk about information creation and representation, it's in the form of how information is created or how information is generated. And we generate information through writing, through painting, through the conduct of research, through production of databases, through composition of music, among others. And then those who create information include universities. For example, University of Ghana. We have government agencies, for example, Environmental Protection Agency. We have private organizations also that creates information or that generates information. For example, Action Aid. There are research institutions also that create information. For example, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, that's the CSIR. Database producers also create information. And then information is represented after it has been generated, or when it is generated, it is represented in a specific form of printed materials. For example, where you have books, we have journals, we have newspapers, we have electronic data. And then when information is generated or created in its raw state, value is put on it through the process of editing. Somewhere along the line, we'll look at who the editor is and what the editor does. And then there are institutions that are responsible for representation of information. These include publishing organizations, database producers, publishing organizations and database producers. Then in terms of searching, selection, acquisition of information, searching, for example, involves looking for information from books, from journals, magazines, newspapers, publishers' catalogs, relevant databases. Now, what is the purpose? The purpose is to be able to identify specific items of information that will be of use or relevance to your user community. And institutions that search for information materials that can be acquired are libraries, archives, museums, records management centers, information centers. And then in selecting tool, it requires a good knowledge of your user community, because if you don't have a good knowledge of your user community, you will cause what in popular parlance is called causing financial loss to the state. What it means is that, or to the organization, what it means is that if you do not know your user community well, you may acquire information material that are not relevant to their needs, and so you will have spent money for nothing. And yes, you know, information materials are very expensive. Even common books are very expensive. Then acquisition. Acquisition deals with getting access to the selected or identified information resource. And this involves vendors, publishers, database producers, subscription agents, jobbers, etc. What the vendors do, for example, they will acquire large quantities or large volumes of the information resources, and then resell at discounted prices, etc. Or publishers can deal, or information professionals can deal directly with publishers. Organization of information. Once the information is created and then value is put on it, it must be put in a manner that it will become usable and useful. Usable and useful in the sense that people should be able to have easy access to them, and it should be beneficial to them when they use them. And in terms of organizing information, there are tools that are used to organize information. These include classification schemes. Again, these are things that you'll be learning about in when you get to level 300. We have a list of subject headings. We have thesauri with the singular as thesaurus. Then we have cataloging tools, and we have filing rules. These are all used in organizing information for retrieval, or for easy retrieval, let me put it that way. And then labels are used to attach to the information resource, so that individuals who need information, both the information professional and the users of the information, can have easy access, or will be able to identify the particular information record easily. And these are done by libraries, archives, information centers, records management centers, information companies, computerized information systems, database industries. They organize information and make them available for use. And then storage, preservation, and retrieval of information. Now let me point out that the vast majority of information that is generated goes into storage. Only a small fraction of the information is used for the purposes of teaching, learning, manufacture, decision taking, entertainment, etc. And so when the information goes into storage, or the rest of the information will be sent into storage and then preserved, and then later retrieved when one person, an individual, or an organization, or a group of people need a specific information. And so storage facilities may involve filing cabinets, may involve open shelves, as in the library, may involve electronic formats. For example, audio books. You may also store it in a computer hard disk. You may store them in databases, maybe on the internet. Okay. And those who provide information storage facilities include computerized information systems, information companies, libraries, archives, media centers, information centers, records management centers, museums, etc. Database industries. They are all providers of storage facilities for information. I also mentioned preservation. Once the information is there, it must be preserved in a manner that it will continue to be useful and usable. And sometimes it requires the information on a certain medium may be required to be sent to another medium for the purpose of preservation. For example, information that is contained in paper materials or on paper, to prevent deterioration after a period of time, can be transferred onto electronic formats in order to preserve it. And as I said, once you store the information and you preserve it, it may become necessary or important to somebody at a certain time. And so the person will have to retrieve the information, or the information has to be retrieved for the individual who needs the information. And retrieval tools that can be used, including indexes, catalogs, bibliographies, registers, search engines. For example, when you go and Google is a search engine that you use to access information from databases on the internet. Indexes, and I talk about indexes, if you take a typical textbook, for example, or subject book, and you turn to the back, you will find what we call the back of the book index, and it helps the individual to locate specific information or items of information in a document. And then we come to dissemination and communication of information. Dissemination deals with the distribution of information to individuals or groups of people. And institutions that are involved in the dissemination of information include libraries, archives, records management centers, museums, information companies. They all disseminate information, and they use several means, including what we call selective dissemination of information, which involves targeting a particular person or drawing up the profile of users, and then routing information, necessary information to them. Then when it comes to communication, communication deals with the transmission of information to individuals, groups of people, organizations, devices, etc., anywhere in the world. And we can communicate information through the spoken language, through written language, even body language, through electronic devices. Then the issues that are involved in communication of information include the content or the information itself, and then the vehicle or the means of transmitting the information. Let me note that in our parts of the country, we are always focused on the vehicles that transmit information. For example, people will acquire computers without thinking of what to do with the computer. So basically, the computer is used for word processing. Whereas in our parts of the information profession, we are more interested in the content, the information that will be handled or that will be channeled through the computer. Then we come to management of information. When we come to management of information, all aspects of information needs to be managed. And so information infrastructure needs to be managed. The objects of information needs to be managed. Hardware, equipment, the people who are involved in the information profession and who are involved in the use of information all needs to be managed. And so information institutions are all involved in the information management process. And systems analysis has to be done, especially on libraries, archives, and computerized information systems regularly in order to ensure that the system is working effectively. Now we come to our third topic, which is information producers. Who produces information, or who are the producers of information? The producers of information are the people who create or generate information in a more organized manner. For example, authors and writers, researchers, government administrators, artists and musicians, database producers, historians, journalists, corporate organizations. These are all producers of information. In a nutshell, this is what we want to discuss about information dissemination and information producers, and then the disseminators of information. Now you have some references there which you are minded to be looking up in order to have more information about what we have discussed so far.